Hi, I'm Jeff Murrah. I want to welcome you to Healthy Marriage Tips, Restore the Family. Today, I am going to cover basic rules for fighting with your spouse. I decided to go ahead and do this basically because in my counseling with couples, I find myself having to go over this repeatedly, or else we run out of time and I'm not able to explain things. And my hope is by going ahead and laying out some of these basic rules and explaining them, that it will help you in your marriage in dealing with the issues at hand. Now, I know that typically you don't think about rules with fighting. I find that when you do have rules, it helps. It helps a lot, mainly because when you have the rules or the boundaries, it helps establish what one therapist calls an atmosphere of safety. But there are other things besides rules that can add to that, because when you have the structure, it does enable there to be a way to move forward, because without any types of rules, it becomes a free-for-all. And I have seen some couples, essentially it turns into a scream fest or guilt fest or threat fest, and that doesn't do anyone any good. So today I'm going to cover some of the basic rules, although some of you may say, well, gee, Jeff, that's so basic. Well, some people need the basics, and that's why I'm going over them. Okay. First, take turns with each of you. Let one person speak and then the other one. In an ideal situation, you will have roughly about 50-50 time. Now, I know that marriages are not perfect and that the amount of time each of you has is not going to line up to be perfectly 50-50. That'll give you something to strive for. I mean, if your marriage is one of those where one person talks 80% of the time and the other person only talks 20% of the time, things are out of whack, and that would need to be looked at. But, if it's 60-40, getting near 50, that's a start. Now, another thing that helps is when you talk about the items one at a time. When you go in there machine gunning your spouse, one issue after another, after another, after another, they feel overwhelmed. And it becomes a situation that is open to manipulation. Because when you have half a dozen issues, number one, it leaves the person on the receiving end feeling overwhelmed. But number two, it also leaves the person on the receiving end, gives them a chance to pick and choose. Okay, which one do I want to pick? Which one do I want to answer? Because a lot of times what happens, one person starts feeling like they're losing ground, and so they bring up all these others to try to outmaneuver or outflank their spouse. There's no need in that. That's not what it's about. You want to get things solved. And solving them is more important than winning them, because solving a problem and winning things with your spouse are two different things. Okay, number three, no name calling or personal attacks. I've seen some couples, of course, some of them play nice and just say, you're acting like a child. And they have these put downs, but they phrase them nicely. It's still a put down. And when people are attacked personally, they react personally. And so that is going to create problems. You also want to avoid pushing and shoving. When it gets to the point where you're pushing and shoving, things can escalate very quickly. I try to discourage any kind of physical contact during the fights, mainly because at those times, those attempts at physical contact can be seen as being aggressive and misinterpreted. And, heaven forbid that you end up before a judge for some of those things. It's very hard to explain. Pushing, shoving, grabbing, and choking. You don't want to choke. All those you want to avoid. You also want to avoid screaming. Raising your voice. A lot of people feel that if I raise my voice, I will be heard. Well, it may have surface validity, but the many studies they've done, it does just the opposite. The louder you get, the more they tune you out, and they actually stop listening to you. So I encourage you, if you tend to be a screamer, try just the opposite. Try speaking quieter. And screaming, I find, goes way back to early childhood issues, and it's very traumatizing. So unless you want to deal with some heavy-duty issues that you never intended to come out from your spouse's childhood, avoid the screaming, because your screaming at them may trigger some stuff much deeper inside of them than whatever your issue is. I mean, if you're upset about the dishes not being done or clothes, socks being left around, the screaming may trigger something even deeper. Okay, you also want to avoid threats and weapons. These are no-no. And I know some common objects can be turned around and used as weapons, things like ashtrays and guns and objects. I've even seen, pieces of fruit thrown at people or plates. And those homes where people tend to like to break a lot of things, that's not helping. And it definitely does not help when you throw it at your spouse, because it is seen as a weapon at that point and an aggressive act. And in defending themselves, you don't know what's going to come out. Especially, like for instance, if your spouse is a veteran and you throw something at them, how are they going to react? It may stir up something you don't want stirred up. Now, another thing that would be helpful is remember that it's important to get their attention before delivering your message. Many spouses that I have worked with, they go ahead and say, well, I told them this. And yes, they told them, but they never got their attention before they delivered it. The person was not paying attention before the communication came, and essentially tuned them out. That doesn't do any good either. Now, I know these are just basics, but some of you need just the basics, and you're not ready for some of the advanced stuff. Now, I may go ahead and do a video on the advanced stuff later on, but I want to go ahead and start with the basics, give you some simple rules, ground rules that you can set up to where whenever you have disagreements, it can become much more productive rather than destructive. And that's my hope for you. And I hope you found this useful. Feel free to leave your comments below. I'll be glad to get to them. Feel free to leave your thumbs up too. I welcome those. So until next time, this is Jeff Miron, wishing you best regards. Goodbye.